I'm Mr. Vazansky, and this is a speed run of practice test 6, the first module, the A module, the medium one, and we can get this crack-a-lackin' by heading for the first conventions question, which is all the way down here on 16, but that's all right. We can check for our omega considerations, of which, well, there aren't any, unfortunately. Then I can check for consistency with that beautiful little dash, but I don't see any in the surrounding text, therefore that strat falls. Then I can eliminate things that are equivalent. This means that A and C both fall as they are equivalent in function at this point. Then I can consider what I want here. I don't think you guys would pause here, and you shouldn't pause because strings is a subject, R is its verb, and we shouldn't separate those suckers with a lone comma. Instrument gets our pick. Conventions, next question. I'm going to check for my omega consideration, of which there are verbs, which is fantastic. I can go for a plural, I can go for a plural, and a singular. So I'm going to suspect this to be subject-verb agreement. I'm going to pick my singular odd man out. We go looking for a subject. Now, its subject is this, that, which is a relative pronoun referring to something. What is it referring to? A writing technique. A writing technique is singular, therefore D is correct. Another conventions question. I'm going to check my omega considerations, and this happens to be a mood question. Am I asking a question or am I making a statement? So I go reading the sentence. The toxic nature recently led a team from the University of Sheffield to investigate how their use could be better regulated. Making a statement, pick it and move on. Another conventions question. I do have the omega configuration of verbs popping. I've got a both, I've got a singular, and I've got a both, and I've got a both. So I'm going to consider tense since these boths are popping, shifts in verb tense. So I've got a future, I've got a present, I've got a past repeated or hypothetical. Lot of nebulous nature there on C, and then I've got the past on this one. Let's hope it's not C. That would be complicated. I go looking for a clue. I do see a made, but this isn't telling me when, so then I go looking some more, and I've got an is. Is the present, illuminates is the present, therefore we pick that butte and move on. I have an omega convention popping for possession here. I've got a couple of things on the table. It also seems to be a pronoun antecedent agreement question as I look at this, because it's giving me all possessive pronouns, though their antecedents could be different. So I could consider two things. Do I have a singular phrase that I'm talking about? Singular would be this one or this one. Or what is the antecedent of this thing? So I can go in the text kind of looking for either clue. In the text, I see that we have a singular phrase. Since we have a singular phrase, we can kill A because it's plural phrases, B because it's plural phrases, and both of these two things survive. Now I'm going to consider what is the antecedent for this question, and the it's is referring back to the phrases too. And since we've already decided that phrase is singular, it's is our singular option. So bizarre. Conventions, the omega consideration is going to pop for this one in terms of X, name, title, name rather. Now, unfortunately, there is the X chillin'. The determiner is right there. So I'm just going to default to a bread and butter. Don't separate subject from its verb with a lonely little comma. So I'm going to see if anything does that. Sure, I have a verb here and a subject up here, but I've got this belongs. As I ask myself, what's the subject of belongs? I've got this deep and humorous voice. Therefore, D would separate it with a lonely comma, and B would separate it with a lonely comma. Then what's different between these guys? This is an absolute mess, but we can consider the final four step if we want to use a colon, considering just what's to the left. We should be able to use a period, and we probably wouldn't want that. We've got something gross to the right side. This tomato, the crab, would be separated from belongs. Absolutely disgusting choice. So we land on this one. We've got logically transition. We're out of there with the conventions, and we're on to these guys. This technique involves smothering the flames surrounding the clay vessel. The vessel takes on, I've got like an after, I've got a result, which seems to be this. Because of the smothering of the flamage, there's going to be the result that it has this quality. I like it. I'm going to pick it and move on. In the early 1970s, Albert Papa took up graffiti art, spreading his work on what was time an unconventional surface. I read the next one. His son, David, has chosen an unusual canvas for his art project. I wouldn't exemplify. No. This indeed, so much so that no, that doesn't make sense to me. Second, though it's his son, we don't really have the notion of a first. So we've got either of these two things on the table. It's our height, however, likewise. Now, however, no, there's no contrast present, and I don't like the choice of likewise because I usually like likewise to be some sort of secondary support, and it lands in the sense of the son is not the papa, but they both use usual surfaces for their art. However, I usually like that coming earlier. So I can appreciate in this moment that likewise is more of a similarly than it is an in addition concept. Man, that's a funky guy, but my comfort in knowing that the contrast that however presents just ain't it allows me to get that right. On to 24. 24, she is an entrepreneur, earned the moniker. We see that all the time in these questions. After successfully challenging discrimination in the state, based, she sued a streetcar company for denying her and other black riders a service. This seems to be what she did in order to challenge the discrimination. So it's going to be a specific example. Then it's not a sequence. It is that thing, not an after. It is that thing, not a second thing. And it wasn't a cause and effect. It is that thing. I look for this one. The Inca used intricately knotted string devices called this to recount information like population data, countable information like payments. They used this thing to also record more complex information. So these are different kinds of, no, that it was used for countable wouldn't entail that it could be used for more complex. It's not exemplifying it because the more complex are not countable. In addition, we're not restating. So again, we're on an in addition in an awkward way, but it would be recording of complex is not countable information, but it supports another usage of the Inca from South America. 25C based. We want to emphasize this person's achievement. By crossbreeding the imported turkey, by crossbreeding this thing, this is what they did. The person succeeded. This is a good word to emphasize an achievement. I like that a lot. Well suited. I like succeeded and well suited. In the 1930s, the institute, which enlisted him, all sought to. This is a goal, but it doesn't really engage with the achievement portion of it that I want. Amal was enlisted by the place at the time. Needed. That's a need, but it doesn't speak to what they achieved. As part of efforts to breed, what they tried to do, an imported species was crossbred. This is what they did. But the achievement seems to be this. They made something that was well suited and they succeeded. Easy peasy. I want to know how the salt enables energy storage for this one. How does the salt enable energy storage? Scientists have developed a freeze-thaw battery that contains molten salt, which liquefies when heated and solidifies at room temperature. Maybe. The stored energy in a freeze-thaw battery, which contains molten salt, can be used by this doesn't say how it enables. How does it allow it? It's just a way to use it. So B falls when the molten salt in a freeze-thaw battery solidifies at room temperature, energy stop and can be stored. I really like what this presents. Molten salt allows a freeze-thaw battery to retain 90%. No, this is like an advantage of this. What is the difference between A and C? Is C true is what I'm going to check. Energy stops flowing, can be stored in the battery. When it's in a solid state, energy, when the salt is in a solid state, stored, can be reheated by, can be used by reheating, thawing the battery, can be stored in the battery, freeze thaw battery. Yes. So this is true. Have developed that contains molten salt, which liquefies every. Yeah. So this doesn't engage with the how. This is a factual detail, and I appreciate those statements. I am going to pick this sucker, and I'm going to move on to the first vocabulary question in this moment. Which choice, let's pick up the pace. Which choice most logical and precise word or phrase? Let's look for a signal element or a context clue. I've got this participle here that's going to kick me forward in this text as I do investigate that. I've got drawing from memories from childhood in Texas on their current. She's pulling from these things. That must mean she's inspired by. As for the next one, disproving the common misconception is this. So the common misconception is going to be my context clue, but I need a little bit more evidence for this. Whose work appears in the context, employ a range of styles. So they're employing a range of styles, so that must mean that the common myth is that they are all one thing. D, as I look for this one, I've got the easy context clue that's going to be, or signal element that's going to inspire some sort of context clue on this side. The measured mass of the W boson has 7 standard deviations higher. It's way bigger. Scale is going to be my answer for this one. As I look at the previous one, since this is going to be cause and effect, I look for this. Birds in a densely vegetated habitats generally sing at lower frequencies than birds living in comparatively sparse habitats. Sense tends to, I don't really know what it would be. As I look at these options, it really is just word choice. Like it's hurting it. None of these are positive. Maybe this one, but it's not like it's playing an opposite game of how vegetation can encompass it. It just can stop, can diminish, can bring down. But I don't really know of a signal element or context clue for this one. All right. Main purpose of the text, what I'm going to do for this one is read the final sentence, but Francie was a reader, and from there I'm going to build an understanding of the main idea. So she was a reader. She loved reading. All right? Right? Despite something, despite that, she loved reading, because I want to engage with that signal element but and what it's presenting. So Francie thought she could read, thought that all the books in the world were in the library, and she had a plan. Francie wanted to read everything in the world. Next sentence, she was reading a book a day. She was reading literally everything, is what it seems to be. She remembered the first author. She started with A. She kept reading. She kept going. She read the B's. For all her enthusiasm, she was pumped still, but B's were tough. But so she's persevering through that. She loves reading. All right, I have an understanding of this person's ambitions as I start reading the items to illustrate Francie's enjoyment, of an unusual topic. I don't really like it. I don't think that reading is a topic. I feel like a topic is a thing within, and I really wouldn't say that unusual is reading books. Now, her task certainly is, but it's our first one, so I'll leave them on the table for now. I don't have an answer for why she prefers reading. She just really loves reading. To portray her determination is absolutely what we've got there. The signal element here guides that. Our topic sentence at the start guides that, and all throughout. She just keeps doing it. For all her enthusiasm, it was tough, but she keeps going. I love the way that it ends. Those original like grants that I was providing at the start for A are absolutely false. To describe a book that its scope is all off for that one. What's the function of the underlined portion? What's the function of the underlined portion? Even though the things were mostly there for townies. It seems to be that. I'm going to try to fight my fight before I start looking into the surrounding text. Does this assert that the medieval Europe steam baths were most popular in rural areas rather than in urban ones? No. For townies, that's just a liar about this sentence. It describes the limitation of earlier historians' studies of medieval European bathing habits. Even though the things are mostly there for townies, this is saying that there's like a critique of old nerds studying of this topic, and I'm not reading that into this at all. It concedes that not all people in medieval Europe had access to public bathhouses. That's exactly what my summary seems to be doing. I'm going to kill B. I'll look at D. It explains why the person decided to study the popularity. This doesn't really do that. I'm a little bit scared since both of these are speaking to like methodology that maybe I'm missing something. So all I'm going to do is, since this is related to this sentence, because this is a subordinate clause, I'm just going to read this and see if I'm spot on. Regular bathing in rivers and streams or daily sponge baths at home were common practices. Yeah, this is absurd. That's not it. It concedes that they weren't able to do that, and I love my choice of C. I'm going to pick it and move on. I want the main purpose of the text, so I'm going to read this last sentence first. Then I'm going to work my way through, if it allows me to. I've got an instead. I want to engage that signal element at some point. She encounters as if she pretends it is her first time seeing it and is romantically approaching it. All right, I can start at the start and start adding to my summary. When she makes music, it is seemingly spontaneous. She is really good, but because of how freely she plays and her willingness to take risks, she's really good, super technical, but effortless. So easy. However, she work real darn hard. As I continue summarizing, despite the experience, she never pretends like she fully understands the piece, and that's where my instead's going to be. And what a grinder she is. Inspiring lady is this person. Does the main purpose provide details about how she identifies what she wants to pick? No. To assert that her performances look effortless? Absolutely. She pretends like she's never seen it before and she's loving it for the first time. To discuss the kinds of music, I don't have the kinds of, like the genres, it doesn't do that. To describe the unique way that she approaches music, I agree with that statement that she hasn't performed before. No, she's pretending like she hasn't performed it before, even if she has. 7 is going to be B, and that aligns exactly with what I've got. Based on the text, how would author of text 2 most likely respond to the underlying claim of text 1? Let's give this a little reedy poo. The objects, the things found are cool, but it is too soon to call them tools. It's too soon to call them tools. The stone pieces, shots fired, are roughly shaped that they may have are probably just broken rocks that you found, you losers. Then we keep reading, and their unearthing has thus far not been accompanied by discoveries, and you have no signs of human activity or even shots fired. DNA. So they're angry. They're like, dude, you can't call those rocks, right? Or sorry, you can't call those tools. Those are broken rocks at best. Now we can start digging to the underlying claim, revealing that humans occupied the cave thousands of years before the Clovis people reached the continent. I would imagine the revealing would be about rocks, but this participle, I'll read the sentence. More than 200 crude stone tools were found embedded in a layer of earth that is up to 33,000 years old. The finding of these tools, reveal that humans occupied the cave thousands of years before the Clovis people reached the continent. They would say, no, dude, no. You didn't find tools. You found rocks that you're pretending are tools. You don't even have evidence. Okay. I know what to anticipate, so I'm going to start looking at the side. Text 2 would suggest that it draws a plausible connection between two groups of people. No, it's not a plausible connection. They're saying that you're a fool for doing this. Between two groups of people, they wouldn't even, what two groups of people? The Clovis people, all that seems to be mentioned, I'm going to read a little bit more, has upended. They wouldn't even say this. No, they would say, no, there's no plausible connection here. You're just making guesses, is what they would say. I will read the rest of the text, though. An excavation has upended the belief that approximately 13,000 years ago, a group known as the Clovis were the first to inhabit the end. Well, no, they would say it didn't upend anything. You have no evidence. Text 2 would assert that it rests on an assumption about the stone pieces that is not sufficiently supported by available. Absolutely. There's not available evidence. It could just be broken, and there are no human DNA, nor are there artifacts. Would they acknowledge that will most likely be proved correct? No, they're not saying that. There is so much shade that they're throwing throughout this as if they're way too much shooting the gun. Premature. Like, it's cool, dog, but it's way too premature. Nothing about this shows that it's going to be proved correct. By pointing out, so text 2 would respond to the underlying claim that revealing that humans occupied the cave thousands of years before the Clovis people reached the continent, by pointing out that it fails to account for evidence that the Clovis people were active on the continent as early as is commonly thought. They didn't say anything about when the Clovis people got there, so that's disgusting. They would also say, you're not even accounting for the evidence that this isn't evidence of people. They would keep yapping that claim. And I feel like what they're saying is that there are even older people. I don't even know where this evidence would come from to prove this thing. D is making things up, and I'm going to pick B and move on. What's the main idea of this text? I'll read the final sentence, which is all of this, starting with a however. He believes that these two terms cannot describe a narrative. Then we've got some explanation. He feels that systematic categorizations of artistic phenomena, these categories discount the subtle way that meaning happens by interactions from artiste, work, and audience, right? No commas needed for that. I understand what I've written. The but is going to kick me back, and when I read the first part, many Theorists distinguish between these two things: arrangement, presentation of events. Critics use these two terms. The Godfather exemplifies this, but he's saying that they're trash. He says they're trash. You can't use these two terms to describe a narrative because it misses the subtle way in which artists and work and audience are represented. So let's engage. Literary theorist, this guy, argued that there are important characteristics of narratives that are not, that's good so far, that are not fully encompassed by the two concepts that discount, not fully encompass the subtle way in which. This is perfect. I love this. I'll keep reading. Literary theorist claimed that meaning is not inherent in a narrative. Maybe that's what that means. Sure. But he's yapping about the terms. But it is, so this loses his gripe about the terms, which is what all this is doing, but is created when an audience encounters a narrative so that narratives are interpreted differently by different people. I don't think I have support for this. Audience is a part of this list, of this thing, to show that differently by different people seems to discredit the artist from this and the work. I just don't know where I would grab these concepts when A just perfectly summarizes what's happening over here. These terms suck. There are other ways to go about it. This is making specific claims that the text doesn't support, but they easily understood. No, he says that they're poorly understood. This is absolutely not his case. He's not having a problem with the terms so much as they're just too narrow, not anything about how it can be tough to understand the Godfather. Most effectively uses data from the table to complete the statement. Partial list of candidate species for de-extinction. De-extinction. All right, Jurassic Park. Among candidate species for de-extinction, this problem would be would be especially concerning. From just reading these things, I don't know what this problem is, and I don't really know what de-extinction is. I know when they're extinct. De-extinction refers to, specifically, researchers are concerned that the longer a species has been extinct, the less likely it is, there will be a suitable habitat. So this problem, the longer they've been extinct would be a problem. Okay, passenger pigeons, which only became extinct a few years after the H word, passenger pigeon. That's true. Okay, so far I'm liking it. Saber-toothed cat, which became extinct 11,000 years ago. That's true. And between these two, we're trying to say that de-extinction is hard with a long species, and that's way longer than 1907. 1907. The woolly mammoth, which became extinct several thousand years before the saber-toothed cat. I absolutely love the way that sounds. However, 11,000 years ago is longer than this. So though this would be tempting if it were true, it's just not true. The Caribbean monk seal, which came extinct in 1952. No, trash, right? We've got this huge year. Pick it, and move on. As I look to this one, I see that I'm going to illustrate the claim. The claim seems to be express mixed feelings about our surroundings. We want a little bit of mixerino. The wallpaper is a kind of sub-pattern in a different shade, a particularly irritating one. But that seems to just be one feeling. By moonlight, the moon shines in all night. When there is a moon, I wouldn't know it was the same paper. Maybe I could read mixed feelings into this statement here. I'm really quite fond of the big room. She loves it, all but that horrid wallpaper. This is exactly it. Whatever reading I would do to this would probably be wrong. We have horrid versus fond. That's gorgeous. The color is repellent. That is almost revolting, smoldering, unclean yellow. So this is all negative. Faded by the slow turning sunlight. Right? Perfect. C is the right answer. Data from the table to complete the comparison. While both species likely benefited from warming temperatures, what's my title? Land area covered by native flowering plants. While both species likely benefited from warming temperatures, this one did what? I'm trying to find my fight right here. Suppressed this one. It's saying this one suppressed the growth of this one. Area covered in 2001, small. So this one did more. Area covered in 2018, and this is the percent increase. Suppressed the growth, which covered a smaller area of land in 2018. So it's saying that this covered a smaller area of land. No, that's a liar. It did not cover a smaller area of land. It just had a smaller percent increase. Did pink see a greater expansion then this, absolutely. It totally saw a larger increase than the other one, but we're going to move on. Showed a greater increase in the average size of individual plants. We have land area covered. Land area covered. This chart is measuring land area covered, not plant size. So that can kill. If I didn't like B, maybe I would go looking for the text, but I think B is a gorgeous choice. Covered land newly freed from ice, 55% faster. 55, that's not, this isn't what it's measuring. It's not measuring this, the rate at which. B is going to be the right choice. I want to directly support the idea advanced by them. What's the idea advanced by them? They did posit that NFM reduces voting probability indirectly. We want NFM to hurt voting probability indirectly. I'll read the sentence that it's in because I'm a little scared. Although no major election took place sufficiently near for them to identify causality between it, they did say that there was an indirect effect. All right. What is NFM tends to increase in strength as major election approaches? Just skimming these two things, it's introducing a lot of terms that I don't feel too comfortable with. So I'm going to give it a quick skim to see what NFM means. As the social media become increasingly multiplied, NFM is that news finds me, where people passively rely on social networks and ambient media environments for current. Okay. They saw a representative group to determine these things, and then the rest of it. Okay, I understand. Loosely enough. So we want to show that NFM reduces voting probability, albeit indirectly. NFM attitudes tends to increase in strength as major elections approach, and people are significantly more likely to vote in major or minor elections. I don't like anything that's happening here with this major or minor elections thing. Nothing seems to state this, and the attitude tends to increase in strength. Doesn't tell me, yeah, A is wrong. It doesn't tell me any way that it engages with voting probability. NFM attitudes has a strong negative effect on political knowledge and interest. So NFM hurts, negative effect. It hurts political knowledge and interest, and there's known to be a strong positive correlation between political knowledge and the interest in the likelihood of voting. I love this one. NFM hurts voting probability indirectly. How? NFM doesn't necessarily directly affect voting probability, but it does have an effect on political knowledge and interest, and those things absolutely do. I love B. Political interest is known to have a strong positive effect on the likelihood of voting, but shows only a weak positive effect on. I don't understand this. Maybe. But then NFM shows little correlation. No, I want to show that NFM introduces indirectly doesn't mean little correlation. It just means like that little process that we went through with B. As I look at D, the likelihood of voting increases as political knowledge increases. Okay, that's a good start. And the relationship between NFM attitude and political knowledge tends to strengthen. So they get stronger, but I love that strong negative effects told me that it hurts it. Then I can attach that causal chain to the next thing where there's a little bit of ambiguity here that I don't really understand. Tends to strengthen as the size of people's social net. I love B. This is presenting something that seems wildly awkward, and I don't think I can make a claim like I can that this hurts this and then make that effective chain to show like my logic as it presents. So B is going to be my right answer. Logically completes the text. What do we got here? Thus, linguists have concluded. So I already know that I'm going to have to bounce back one. Records show that U.S. was colonized by people from Scotland. Thus, language nerds concluded. What did they conclude? I need a notion about where this R sound came from. The dialect spoken in Scotland, the R sound is strongly emphasized when it appears at the end of syllables or before consonants. Fine. In the Upland South, English dialects of Upland South are regions. Oh, so we're in the United States for Upland South. Do the exact same thing. Cool. So historical records show that Upland South went and that we in the United States came from this place. Most logically completes. The English dialect spoken in Upland South in the United States acquired the emphasis of the R sound from the dialect spoken in Scotland. Yeah, that's absolutely the right answer. They came from there. We'll keep reading. Emphasis on the R sound will eventually spread from dialects. No, we have no claim. This is how we got it. They came here. This is how we got it. We can't make a statement about reaching out. The English dialects spoken in Scotland were influenced by. Oh, no, this is reversing it. We have ancestors. We don't have any evidence that they went there. People from Scotland abandoned their emphasis. No, because it's there present in the Upland South. Easy. Final one. What do we got? Therefore, the team hypothesized that the appendix likely. I am going to have to go back a sentence, so we'll grip a moreover and move forward. The team determined that the species with the organ, I'm looking back to see to make sure that we're talking about, yes, appendix havers have higher concentration of lymph tissue, which boosts immune in the blah, 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 right by it. That's where it's located, in the lymph tissue right by it. All right. Moreover, I am going to see if I can find my fight here. Was once present in non-mammal species, but has since disappeared. I see mammal in both of these, so I want to know if that moreover is touching mammals. The Smith and her team investigated the evolution of the appendix that was present in some mammals, but is generally thought to have no function. Common thought is no function. Okay. Looking at 553, appendix was independent and across multiple lines separately and significantly and has not gone away. Okay. So I can engage. Was once present in many non-mammals, but don't get out of here with this non-mammal species talk. I don't even know where I would get that. Has been preserved in certain mammal species because it benefits their immune system. I love what that's presenting. It was there. It hasn't gone away. It seems to be engaging with the benefit to the immune system. B is looking awfully cute. Will emerge in greater numbers of mammal species because it may serve a necessary function. That's a bold take, right? We have the support for the immune system, but to project it forward, just like in that Scotland one, I have no evidence to say that I can kick it forward. And here, there's no evidence in this final sentence that I can kick it forward. C falls produced a higher concentration of tissue in animals in the past than it currently does. That's absolutely wrong. I don't have any evidence for that. I just have that compared to not havers, it has more, but not to the other group. I have no evidence to support that. So easy. Don't panic when you get close to the end. You take your time, you look through the things, you find your evidence, and it's easy. Nothing to fear.